thought that I could run a decently competitive time in the marathon, but I didn't realize how hard 26.2 miles really is. And it is just so much different than other races. It's unlike the ultra marathon distances because they're short enough to actually run really fast. But they're so much different from any of the shorter distances that you actually have to think about fueling. Because if you don't fuel enough, if you go out too fast, you're going to run out of any fuel that you have stored in your body, and you are going to have the same experience that I did at New York. You're going to slow down. It's going to be a feeling unlike anything else that you have experienced in a 5K, a 10K, or even a half marathon. And I didn't recognize that. I didn't respect it. And it was a very challenging race for me.
Kia ora, friends, and welcome back to the Vegan Body Coach podcast. I'm stoked to be back on the mic with you again, and today we've got a winner episode for you if you're at all interested in endurance training. But by way of introduction, if you're new here, my name is Jason Burton. I am the host of the Vegan Body Coach podcast, an online personal trainer, coach, in-person personal trainer, and I run a gym here in New Zealand called Jack's Fitness Gym. This podcast is all about bringing evidence-based information, quality guests such as researchers, athletes, and anybody that is just influencing for positive change. It's all about bringing together like-minded people, learning from each other, and optimizing our lifestyles, our training, and our nutrition for whatever fitness goals that we have. Today, I was super stoked to interview Jason Fitzgerald. He's a very well-renowned and well-respected running coach and the founder of strengthrunning.com, which is one of the biggest running sites on the internet. Along with this, he is the host of the Strength Running podcast, one of the most popular running podcasts on the platform at this stage, and has a whole host of amazing blogs and videos and all that good stuff online for you to learn from. So I was super excited to interview Jason today, all about getting your first marathon. Starting that journey from someone who has potentially never run before or just dabbled in a little bit of recreational running to actually deciding to take on the big 42.2. So Jason has a lot of experience in this area. He started running in college, doing cross-country, track and field events, and eventually moved on to doing some of the more long-distance things, such as his first marathon in 2008, which was the New York City Marathon, which he ran in 2 hours 44, but subsequently developed a severe ITB injury, which sidelined him from running for around 6 months. But of course, like most great coaches do, when something doesn't go quite to plan, they go and research, they go and learn, and they become much better coaches because of it. And since then, Jason has run more than ever and PR'd a marathon at the Philadelphia Marathon at a 2 hour 39 pace. So I wanted to bring Jason on today to specifically discuss how to tackle your first marathon. We cover Jason's own experiences with marathon running. We cover the main misconceptions around endurance running, such as pace, form, injury prevention, strength training, and we jump into some information on how to actually structure your own week of training to ensure you're getting the most out of your training, but also knowing you're not doing too much. And finally, we wrap it up with a quick discussion around the actual race day, what to expect, and how to overcome the inevitable hitting the wall. So guys, you're in for a good one. It's a nice, good, long conversation and super interesting, full of heaps of good takeaways. You're going to absolutely love it. So let's just get straight into it. This is Jason Fitzgerald, episode 32 on the Vegan Body Coach podcast. You are listening to the Vegan Body Coach podcast, all about optimizing your strength, fitness, and physique through a plant-focused diet. My name is Jason Burton, and I'm a nutrition and training coach for vegans, the plant-centric, and plant-curious. I'm sitting down with athletes, experts, and influencers around the world to inspire you to create your best vegan body yet. Alrighty, Jason. So thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you coming on and spending your time with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome, man. And just for the listeners, whereabouts you coming from today?
So I am in Denver, Colorado, the Mile High
Right.
City here in Colorado. I don't know how familiar your listeners are with United States states, but we're right along the Rocky Mountain Range, and it's a beautiful place to train and run, and just incredible place for runners. It's one of the more popular places for the distance running scene here in the United States.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of runners tend to congregate around the Denver, Boulder, Colorado area, and it's sort of become a bit of a bucket list for me now to go and spend some time over there because I hear it's beautiful. I hear there's so many good trails, and it seems like a really great place just to live as well. I hear that, especially like I think I saw some statistics on Boulder that it was one of the I don't know, happiest places to live, or maybe like, most health conscious places to live. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely true. And while I'm a little bit south of Boulder in the city of Denver, they're very much similar. And I noticed that right when I came here and started living here about 7 years ago. And some friends would come out, they would visit me, and we would all comment, "Wow, Denver really seems to be a fit and healthy." Type of city where everyone's out there riding their bike or going running or doing some sort of outdoor sport. And so it's nice to live in a place where people value being outside and exercise and being healthy. It's a very exciting place to live. There's a lot of vitality here.
Yeah, no, I do love that. It sounds like a great place to be hanging out. So, were you originally from there, or is this somewhere you moved to?
No, I moved to Denver back in 2014. I originally from the East Coast of the
Okay.
US. So I lived up in Massachusetts outside of Boston. That's where I grew up. I went to school in Connecticut, and then I went down near Washington, D.C., and spent about 6 years there before coming to Denver. So it's been
Okay.
quite the journey.
Cool. And the reason I asked is was running already a big place in your life before you got to Denver?
Oh, yeah. Running has been a huge part of my life since I was in high school. I started running cross country as a freshman in high school. I showed up in basketball shorts and basketball shoes
Yeah.
thinking that I was going to high jump because cross country is like track, right? Well, I found out very quickly that in cross country, all you do is run. But thankfully, I just had such a great time with the guys on the team, and the coach was really great that I just fell in love with the sport. And once I started to improve, I was hooked for life. And so I ran 3 seasons all throughout high school and then in college. And, I had been running for about 15 or 16 years before moving to Denver.
Wow. Yeah, cool. So you really got into running quite an early age. Did you feel like you were, I guess, inherently gifted for running, or was it something you've had to work really hard to get to a point where you're, at a decent level in terms of your performance, or is it, something that kind of came quite naturally to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say a little bit of both. I remember when I first started, we went on a 2.9 mile run, which is, for your listeners, going to be way less than 5K.
Yep.
And I couldn't finish it. I had to take multiple walk breaks. I felt like I had been run over by a truck for the entire next week. And at that point, I knew that I didn't have a lot of talent. And I always felt like I had enough talent to be on the varsity team, whether I was in high school or college, but not enough talent to be one of the top runners. And so I did have to work really, really hard for everything that I ever achieved in my running career. I think that's true for every runner, though.
Right.
And for me, that was, enough to get me to compete in college, to be on a varsity team, to run sometimes that a lot of people would think are competitive. But I always surrounded myself with very talented runners. So I never felt talented, but I think a little bit of both. I certainly have some talent, but it's something I had to work really, really hard to build over time.
Yeah. Is the long distance running the majority of the stuff you've done? Is it sort of marathon and upwards, or is it you've been doing is your, I guess, your specialty, or something that you love to do is more some of the shorter distance 5 and 10Ks?
I think that I have a background in the shorter stuff. When I was obviously in high school and college, they don't have any of the longer stuff. So I really focused on the 1500 and the mile, the 3K, the 5K.
Mm.
I loved 8,000-meter cross country
Oh,
races.
cool.
But that was the longest I ever raced when I was in college. And then when I graduated, I spent about 10 years trying to run half marathons, marathons, and some of those longer distances, but still never really getting too far away from racing 5Ks, racing 8Ks, and some of those events. So I really think my background is really as a track and cross country athlete. And then I moved into some of the longer things in my mid to late 20s.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, for the listeners, Jason has a really great podcast called Strength Running and a blog and website of the same name. And today I wanted to, talk specifically with you, Jason, around somebody running their first marathon. We've got a group of people here in New Zealand that are working towards the Queenstown Marathon in November. And for all of us, it's a never been done before event. We're all we're fitness enthusiasts, we're health enthusiasts, but doing something for a long period of time like a marathon is something new to majority of us. So I wanted to get you on and discuss from that perspective a little bit as to how you would approach a first marathon, and maybe just some tips and tricks that you can give to listeners who might be on their own running journey or potentially starting running for the first time. So I'd love to hear, Jason, what was your experience like running your first marathon?
Oh man, my first marathon was kind of a disaster, but something that I look
think many
back
of them
on
are.
fondly as a great learning experience. So my first marathon was the 2008 New York City Marathon. I was 2 years out of college. I think I had just celebrated my 25th birthday. So it was, in a way, it was sort of my birthday present to myself.
Yeah, cool.
And I went into the New York City Marathon as your typical 25-year-old cocky, runner who had just come from a college background, had never run something as long as the marathon. And I thought that, I'd be coming through Central Park at the end of the race, running negative splits, just cruising and just having a great time. And that didn't happen at all. I had a very cliche race. I hit the wall at mile 20. I ran out of fuel. My pace just got slower and slower and slower. I ended up, I remember very specifically around mile 25 being passed by a senior citizen, and he made me feel like I was just standing still. And oh my God, for a 25-year-old, that is a very humbling experience. But I think it was a very valuable experience because I didn't give the marathon enough respect. Even as someone who, I was going into the marathon as someone who, I ran under 74 minutes in the half marathon. So I thought that I could run a decently competitive time in the marathon, but I didn't realize how hard 26.2 miles really is. And it is just so much different than other races. It's unlike the ultra marathon distances because they're short enough to actually run really fast. But they're so much different from any of the shorter distances that you actually have to think about fueling, because if you don't fuel enough, if you go out too fast, you're going to run out of any fuel that you have stored in your body, and you are going to have the same experience that I did at New York. You're going to slow down. It's going to be a feeling unlike anything else that you have experienced in a 5K, a 10K, or even a half marathon. And I didn't recognize that. I didn't respect it. And it was a very challenging race for me. The final 5 miles or so were just a death march of me just trying to get to the finish line and slow down as little as possible. But like I said, it was a great learning experience. And so I think a lot of my success in my later marathon, where I didn't hit the wall, I finally achieved the goal that I had been kind of going after for a really long time, was because of that first really poor marathon. So sometimes, you do have to have a bad race to learn from it and come back even stronger.
Yeah, 100%. I think that kind of sentiment is echoed from a lot of running coaches and just runners in general who have done their first marathon, and potentially it was something they didn't train a lot for, they didn't give enough time, or potentially they just went out too quick or whatever it may be, and they have that kind of similar experience of it not going so well. But it gives them, it gives them something to work from, right, and something to learn from. And I just love that idea of respecting that distance, respecting the marathon. I think for myself, I could go and run a half marathon today and do it pretty fine. It'd be pretty tough, but it'd be okay. But it's the idea of running a full marathon, at 42.2 kilometers. That's a distance that seems astronomically large to most people and to myself. And so I think for ourselves, it's going in there with the mindset of, knowing that this is a very, very tough thing to do and giving yourself, I guess, a lot of leeway and grace to be able to just get over that finish line as the number one goal, as opposed to, I think, one of the common mistakes I think a lot of people make is trying to set themselves some kind of time goal for their first marathon, especially for, recreational runners like us, where the time doesn't matter. What matters is achieving the goal, and the goal is big enough already, which is just getting over that finish line.
Yeah, I do think that you do have to be kind to yourself with your first marathon. And that may mean not having a time goal. It may mean having tiers of goals so that, maybe you do have a time goal, but it's not super aggressive. It makes sense based on what you've run in other distances, whether the 10K or the half marathon. But having those tiers of goals can be really helpful so that you don't do what I did and was basically like, well, if I don't hit this one very aggressive time-based goal, then my race is going to be deemed a failure. But instead, you have these tiers where, okay, I wasn't able to accomplish my tier 1 goal, but that doesn't mean that I had a poor race because I did accomplish tier 2 and tier 3. So it's a helpful way of thinking about your goals, and it's just a way to be kinder to yourself so that you're not placing a lot of undue pressure on yourself that you don't really have to.
Yeah. And what do you think I guess from coaching, a lot of people throughout your career now, what do you think the draw card is for people that are wanting to run a marathon? Like, what is this, what is it about a marathon or even a half marathon or a 10 kilometer, something that is a stretching goal for that individual? What is it about that draws people in and makes them set that goal in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's probably going to be different for every runner. Some people are running because they just want to be healthier. They want to lose weight. Maybe they do have a time goal. But I think more generally, I think broadly, people just are looking to do things that make them feel alive. Everyone can sit there and binge on Netflix. Anyone can basically go on their phone and get endless entertainment or order something online that'll be at their door in 2 or 3 days. People don't want convenience. People want to feel alive. And I think running is an amazing venue for exactly that, helping you just celebrate life. Go do something really hard. Maybe it's run a marathon. Maybe it's run a fast half marathon. Whatever it is, even your first 5K is just such an electrifying experience that I think is just so exciting for people, especially when they're first starting, that, that is going to just brighten up their day, brighten up their week. My God, if you run a marathon, you're going to be on cloud 9 for a month afterward. Once you recover, you're going to be a little tired and you're going to want a lot of food and sleep. But after that, you are just going to bask in the glow of your accomplishment. And I think that is why so many people are getting into running right now.
I love that. Yeah, it's a great thing to do. And I think, because it's so easily accessible by people as well, you don't need a gym membership. You don't need all the fancy equipment. You can literally just pop some shoes on and you're out the door and you're running. So I think that's, that is a really cool thing. I mean, I guess for myself, I do have a running background because I was in the military for a number of years and we did a lot of running. And it was just the nature of what we did. But I think what I've been learning over the course of this program and we've been doing for this marathon is that running is a whole nother world when we're looking at, I guess, long distance running and the strategy that goes into, I guess, programming and your cadence and your pace and all these different things that come into it, as opposed to what I used to do in the past, which was just, they go, hey, we're running 10 kilometers, go, and you run as fast as you can until that 10 kilometers is done, and then you collapse and you're like, cool, I did it. That was the whole goal, was just like run to the end, get it done, and then you're finished for the day. So running now for me is taking on this whole other yeah, there's other aspect of learning the intricacies of running. But from your own experience, Jason, I'd love to ask what you think the biggest misconceptions are for beginners when they start working towards a endurance running event.
I would say that I think the first big misconception or mistake or kind of, problem that beginners might run into when they start targeting some of these longer races, the half marathon and definitely the marathon,
Mm,
is simply not giving yourself enough time to prepare for the event. And so, I've gotten emails from runners all over the place who are like, I've been running for a couple months. My long run right now is 15 kilometers, and I'd really like to run this marathon that's coming up in 7 weeks.
yeah.
And I have to tell them, you're simply not ready. You are just not ready to embark upon this huge journey of running 42.2 kilometers in 7 weeks.
Mm,
You've just started running. You haven't built up the mileage. Your long run is just not where it needs to be to give you the not only the confidence that you can actually finish the distance, but also just the physiological and physical tools to be able to do so. And so I think the biggest misconception is rushing the training and
mm,
thinking that you can get ready fairly quickly, because you can't. It really does take the body a couple weeks to adjust to any one training stimulus.
mm,
And so I think working backwards from whatever race that you might be training for is probably one of the more productive ways of thinking about things. So look at a calendar and see how many weeks do you have until your race. And then if it's something like a marathon, one of the big determinants of your success is your ability to do your long runs. So that weekly run, that's a lot longer than any other single run. And generally speaking, you want to build that long run up to about 32 kilometers. Different coaches will have different numbers, 30, 34, somewhere in that range. And that's going to give you the adaptations you need to run the marathon.
mm,
And so if you can't safely build your long run up to that distance with the time that you have available, then you don't have the time available to
mm,
train for a marathon. And so think in terms of how much time you have, how much time you need to safely build that long run. And I do think one of the other big mistakes here is runners thinking that they can just increase the distance of their long run every week from the beginning of their plan to the end of their plan. So, they're like, oh, I'm running, 16 kilometers for my long run. Next week, I'll do 18. The week after that, I'll do 20K. And then from there, things start to unravel because it takes the body weeks to really adapt to the stress of those longer runs.
mm.
And you really just have to give the body more time. So I like to have runners increase the distance of their long run maybe every 2 weeks. And then every 6 or 8 weeks, you take a down week where the whole volume and mileage of your week, including your long run, is less than the week before.
Mm.
And so it's a nice way of just giving your body a break and also just giving your mind a break. I think it's really important to take a psychological break from training so hard and always trying to run more, run longer, run faster, run more frequently.
Mm,
And that can be a really helpful way to make marathon training a little bit more doable.
yeah.
But because we always want to respect the distance, because it is a very difficult distance, we have to give ourselves enough time to train properly for it.
Yeah, I love that. Is the time, having enough time, Jason, is that purely for allowing enough time for aerobic adaptations, or is it more so allowing enough time for just the physiological sort of structural adaptations of being able to consistently overload the tissues with longer distances? Is that just, giving you enough time so that, yeah, I guess you prevent injury?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think ultimately it's both,
Mm,
but if I had to choose, it's probably more important to give your structural fitness. So, the strength of your muscles and tendons and ligaments and bones and, everything that's in your joints, that actually takes more time to adapt to training stress than, say, your muscles.
mm,
And so all those connective tissues, your bones, they take more time to adapt to, let's say, a 20-kilometer long run than your aerobic system, your endurance, your cardiovascular fitness. And so what ends up happening is that, we can go back to our example of that runner who's running 2K more every single week. That runner is going to aerobically be okay. They're going to be able to run 18 and then 20 and then 22 kilometers and then 24 kilometers. But then what happens? They almost always get hurt. And so that's not a deficiency of the aerobic system. What that is really a deficiency of your structural system. You've experienced a soft tissue injury. Maybe it's a muscle strain. Maybe it's a strain, some sort of tendonitis in the joint or something like that. And that is because the ability for your joints and your tendons and all those connective tissues to play catch up just takes a longer period of time. And so, yeah, you kind of have to couple, and now we're kind of going off track here, but I always think it's really helpful to couple your running with strength training so that you're giving all those connective tissues an additional stimulus to adapt, to get stronger, to get more durable and tougher so that they can handle all the running. Because if you can handle the running, then you can actually run a lot and you can ramp up your running much more quickly. But the real question is, well, how much can you handle? How much of a rate of increase can you handle as well? And so as a beginner, even as an intermediate, it's much more beneficial to be a little bit more gradual, be a little bit more patient with your increases in mileage and the distance of your long run while you're doing a fair amount of strength training to get stronger.
And what are some of those common injuries you do see with clients? You might not see them because you're programming well for them, but you see with other people in the running community that will start this kind of event, and maybe they are increasing their mileage too quickly. What are some of those common injuries you do see? I'm assuming there's a lot of things like shin splints, hamstring strains, things like this.
Yeah, all the classic overuse injuries. So when we're talking about running injuries, we're technically talking about repetitive stress injuries. So this is not the injury that you would get as, a football player with someone slide tackling you and, getting a fracture in your shin. This is not something that, you might get an injury in baseball. It's not an acute injury. This is an injury where you're getting it because you're doing the same motion over and over and over again. So you'll see a lot of Achilles tendinopathy. You'll see a lot of plantar fasciitis, which is in the bottom of your foot. It's kind of a problem with the tendon on the bottom of your foot. You'll also see IT band syndrome, which usually presents with a fair amount of pain on the outside of your knee, where that IT band connects from your hip. And then from there, there's your shin splints, your mild muscle strains. Those are probably the most popular running injuries, and they're all repetitive stress injuries. Even the more serious injuries like a stress fracture or a stress reaction is basically your body's response to ongoing, repeated stress without enough recovery. And so that can, frankly, it can fracture your bones, or it could give you a slight strain in the muscle. So that's why we're doing a lot of strength training, and we want to be gradual with the mileage increases.
Yeah. So going off on that just a little bit more, I guess the key component of avoiding those injuries is, the gradual increases in distances. And then, like you mentioned, the strength training component. Is there anything else in regards to, I guess, recovery or stretching modalities, or specific strength exercises that you think are essential for beginners to avoid any of these common overuse injuries?
Well, I think the most important thing to stay healthy as a runner. So if you were essentially, what we're doing now is we're listing or ranking injury prevention strategies.
Yeah.
So the number one strategy to stay healthy, whether you're a beginner or you're a professional runner, whether you have a day of experience or 10 years of experience, is to make sure your training is structured properly. Because if you are running workouts that are not appropriate for your fitness level, for the race that you're training for the time in the season that you're in, and if the density of your training is too high, so in other words, you're doing a long run and some faster workouts and you're clustering them too close together without enough recovery, that is a training structure problem. And no amount of stretching or ice baths or, compression gear or whatever your recovery, strategy of the day is, none of that will help you if your training is improperly structured to begin with. And so that's number one. The number two most important injury prevention strategy there is strength training. So once you've gotten your training structured well, you're not making silly mistakes with your training. The next thing to do is to add in strength training. That is going to kind of be the yin to running's yang. It's the other side of the coin. It's the anabolic stressor in your training that's going to help you hormonally. It's going to help from a muscle strength and power perspective. And it's really going to make all of your connective tissues and joints a lot more durable. And so I think those are the big two. That's 90% of the work right there. Get your training structured right, and then add in some strength training so that you're not, you're not kind of just running yourself into the ground. You're giving yourself a little bit more durability and just ability to handle all of the stress of running, because running is quite stressful.
Yeah, 100%. And on your podcast, you had Tony Gentlecore on, who I really love his perspective on, strength training and sort of focusing on those fundamentals and foundations. When you're looking at strength training for runners, I think probably the common, I guess, my viewpoint, I've got more of a background in sort of hypertrophy and strength training, in the weight room, a lot of barbell work and dumbbell work and whatnot. But I guess from my perspective, I see a lot of, I guess, running programs just using like body weight strength movements or calisthenics or whatever it may be. Is there a specific way to train for strength, or for running strength, I should say, that you use with your clients that you would recommend to the listeners?
Yeah, so I think it might be helpful to talk about what I think is ideal strength training.
Yeah.
So something like, if we had to structure the perfect strength programming into a runner's schedule, what might that look like? And so what I might consider ideal strength training is, let's just say there's a runner who runs 5 days a week. And so the 2 days that they're not running, those are just going to be rest days. You're not going to do anything else on those days. Maybe you go for a walk. Maybe you go for an easy bike ride. You're staying active, but you're not doing any formal exercise. Now, from a strength training perspective, ideally, I would have a runner get into the weight room twice a week to actually do some real weightlifting. This is where we're going to be using the barbells and dumbbells. We're going to be lifting relatively heavy weight. And our goals in the weight room are injury prevention, strength, and power. Now, I didn't mention endurance, which catches a lot of runners off guard, because a lot of runners will get in the weight room and they'll do like 4 sets of 20 repetitions with a relatively low weight, because the thinking goes, well, I'm an endurance runner, so I'm going to get into the weight room and train for endurance, right? And admittedly, that's how I used to think about strength training. And it couldn't be farther from how runners should actually spend their time in the weight room, because our goals are not endurance. We get enough of that stimulus when we're out there running. We're doing all our workouts, we're doing our long runs, we're running most days of the week. Our body is primed to gain endurance from all that running. But in the weight room, we're not there for endurance. We're there for strength. We're there for power. We're there to actually improve our ability to lift heavy things. That is the very definition of strength, the ability to lift heavier and heavier objects. And so that's what we have to do as runners, because number one, it's going to give us one of the best injury prevention stimuluses that we could ask for in our training. It's just going to make you stronger and much better able to handle all of that repetitive stress that you get from the impact of running. The other thing that we're doing is we're actually trying to develop some power. So, anytime you've seen a race and you see the faster runners at the beginning of the race and they're flying into the home finish line, they're exerting a tremendous amount of power. You need aerobic fitness to unlock that power, because if you just don't have the lungs and the heart to be able to do it, you're not going to be able to do it. But at the same time, you also need to be able to recruit a lot of muscle fibers. And that's what we're doing in the weight room. We're deadlifting, we're squatting, we're picking up heavy weight, and we're recruiting a lot of muscle fibers to do that. And that higher level neuromuscular fitness, that type of brain muscle communication, really does come in handy in the later stages of a race, when you're very fatigued and you're trying to run fast, and maybe you're trying to kick at the end of the race to the finish line, that's when you need to recruit those muscle fibers and kick in strong to the finish line. So lots of different goals for runners in the weight room, but it's certainly not endurance. And the weightlifting that we do in the gym is going to accomplish those goals. Now, the other 3 days of the week that this hypothetical runner is running, we're not going to be in the gym lifting weight. I mean, we're not weightlifters, we are runners. And so on the other days, we're still going to be doing some strength training, but it's going to be body weight. Maybe you're using a band or a fairly light medicine ball, something like that to give yourself a little bit of extra resistance. But after each run, I love to see runners do 10 to 20 minutes of body weight, strength, or core work. And the goal here is largely injury prevention. So a lot of the exercises and routines that I promote on strength running, and I have so many free ones that people can just search the blog for, but these exercises are largely taken from the world of physical therapy. So if any runner has ever been hurt, they go see the physio and they get a certain exercise selection. A lot of these exercises are used in our routines to help you stay healthy. So they're great at helping you recover from an injury, but they're equally as effective as prehab at helping you stay healthy when you're already healthy. And so I have this fun little model that helps runners understand this, and I call it the sandwiching method. All you're going to do is you're going to sandwich your run in between a dynamic warm-up before the run and then 10 to 20 minutes of runner-specific strength training or core work after the run. And we haven't really talked about the warm-up. Maybe we get into that later, but that does include some light strength training, but the real work comes after the run where you're going to be doing some body weight work. And so by combining these two types of strength training, the easier body weight strength training after most of your runs with 2 dedicated weightlifting days in the week, we are accomplishing all the goals of lifting for runners or strength training for runners. We're improving our economy through heavy weightlifting in the gym. We're becoming more powerful through that heavy weightlifting and maybe even some power or explosive exercises like plyometrics, like Olympic lifts. And then we're also getting a very strong dose of injury prevention work in our training as well by doing all the body weight stuff that we might do in a physical therapist office, and also just building more durable joints and connective tissues and muscles as well.
No, I love it. It's looking at your whole training paradigm as more of a holistic overview of of fitness, right? It's building strength in the tissues and in the joints that you need for whatever specific sport you're going to be playing or participating in, but it's also building the actual specific skill you need for that sporting outcome with for example, for endurance running, it's that aerobic endurance, right? So I think it's having that more holistic viewpoint, and I think that's really refreshing for people to hear that running is not just running, it's incorporating the strength component as well, and actually doing proper strength training that's going to build strength, build some muscle mass, and prevent injury as well. I'd love to ask you, Jason, around the structure of training. Often you'll see in training programs for running, you'll have the weekly long run, you'll have some midweek easy runs, but there might be some interval-based running in there as well, or some hill running and things like this. When it comes to, again, it's like looking at that whole, hey, I'm going to do a 40-kilometer run, I'm an endurance runner, why should I be doing intervals on a track, or why should I be doing hill sprints or any of these other things? Why shouldn't I just be focusing on those long runs to actually build my endurance? Where do you see those types of runs coming into a training program, and what benefit do they play?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, ultimately, running is a multifaceted endeavor. And if you want to be a fast runner, then you don't need just endurance. You also need speed. I mean, we're talking about running fast, aren't we? So you do need speed. We talked about power. That is a physical skill that we need as well. So we need power, we need speed, we need endurance, obviously. And, I'm a coach who's often telling his runners to not even call yourself a runner. Let's instead call yourself an athlete that specializes in running. And that is a helpful frame. It's just a different way of thinking about running. It's a new perspective that helps runners recognize the fact that they have to do other things than just run. And even within their running, they can't just run the same distance at the same pace every day. They have to mix it up. They have to do slow, easy runs for recovery and also just for general endurance building. They have to do some longer runs at a more, still an easy effort, but not a recovery effort. That's going to build higher end endurance. It's going to improve their running economy. And somewhat at the extremes, it's going to help them get faster because as their slow twitch muscle fibers get fatigued, they're going to start recruiting more of your fast twitch muscle fibers, which is a nice little adaptation that can happen at the end of some of your long runs. But then, of course, there's all the great workouts that we can do as runners. There's strides or hill sprints, which improve your top end speed, which help improve your running economy, which just help with turnover and making fast running feel easier. So there's a certain amount of coordination that's built in some of those very fast sessions. And then there's hill workouts. Hill workouts are wonderful because, not only are they going to help get you faster, but they're going to help get you stronger. So hill running is similar to weightlifting in some ways, in that by running against gravity, you are building more strength and you're doing it in a way that is less stressful on the body than running the same effort on flat ground. So there's less pounding, there's less impact. You're building some of that strength. You're building more power by running up hills. And then, of course, you get on the track and you can do some real fast interval work. And that's working on your VO2 max. It's working on your body's ability to deliver oxygen to your hardworking muscles while you're already in a very stressful state. And if you have, any real running goals, even if it's just the marathon, even if you've just started running, you just want to finish a marathon, doing interval work is going to make you into a better runner. And better runners typically have more of a fun time in a race than runners who aren't as good because it's not as stressful. They have more fun. They can, wave to the crowd and look around. They can run a faster time. And so part of training to be a runner is to do the normal training that runners do. And so, it's almost like talking to a basketball player and say, well, why should you ever have to practice a free throw? Well, they're going to come in handy at some point.
Right.
And it's also just going to improve you as a player more broadly. And so that's why we do the speed work. It's going to make you faster. It's going to improve your economy. And I do think the variety of paces that you have in any training program is a valuable way to prevent injuries because, like we talked about, injuries are repetitive stress injuries. So anything we can do to reduce the repetitive nature of running is by definition going to reduce your injury risk. So as long as those workouts are appropriate for you, as long as you're not running too fast, then that change in pace is going to impact your mechanics. It's going to improve your mobility and your strength and your power and your speed. So lots of things to like about interval work. And I would encourage any runner, even if they're just a beginner, to start doing some type of faster workout every week, even if it's relatively short and it's relatively slow. It doesn't matter. Just get started and you can build from there.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the idea of, spending a fair amount of your time training to a point where you can actually enjoy the event, right? I think that's a very big one for me is like you were saying, being able to, get to a certain level of, I guess, fitness so that when you're doing, even though a marathon is going to be tough either way, but when you're doing a marathon or you're playing a game or whatever it may be, your training is being sufficient enough so that you can go and do that event with some level of enjoyment. You're not just struggling the whole way through and suffering. You're actually, like you're saying, able to, wave to people and smile and have a good time as you're going through this event. So I just really love that mindset. And then when you mentioned, having variance in your pace, your running pace, I guess this is one that when I first started to look into running programming a little bit more for these longer distance events, I didn't really factor in the idea of running pace or running cadence. And I guess the idea of, especially for a beginner, when you're running something such a long distance as a marathon, you actually have to run really slow, and this was new to me. I thought, you just want to try and run that as fast as you can. But what are your thoughts now as a running coach on running cadence and how fast someone should actually be running on majority of their runs, given that I guess their interval runs and track runs and things like this are probably going to be a lot faster. And like you were saying, having that variance in running pace and running cadence is probably a good thing for injury prevention. But when we're looking at the majority of someone's training program, what kind of pace should they be setting, or what kind of cadence should they be running at for, I guess, the most efficiency and of course, the reductions in injury risk as well?
Yeah. So in terms of pacing, I think a lot of runners are surprised that most of their training should be at a pretty easy effort. And so, common figures that are thrown around is about 80 to 90% of your weekly mileage should be at an easy effort. And so that's a lot of your mileage, obviously.
Yeah.
And so that takes a lot of runners by surprise because, they kind of think to themselves, well, I want to be a fast runner. Why don't I train to actually be a fast runner? Well, a lot of how you get faster, a lot of the reason why someone is fast is their ability to tolerate a high amount of work. And so as runners, that's mileage. Part of it is speed. So part of it is like the workouts that you can do. Part of it is, the overall difficulty or intensity of your mileage. But a big part of it is simply your mileage. So if someone is struggling to run, let's just say 50 kilometers in a week, well, they're going to have a really hard time running a marathon because they're trying to run in one day what someone, has been running all week. Just a little bit more. And so the runner who's running 100 kilometers a week or 150 kilometers a week, they're going to be much more capable. They have just, through the sheer act of running easy mileage, more and more and more of it, they're going to be more competent at the distance because they're just simply more trained for it. So 80 to 90% of your weekly mileage should be at an easy effort. And then, 10 to 20%, depending on your ability. I do tend to be a little bit more conservative with newer runners, should be, whatever the workout is for that week. And I do think for beginners, one faster workout a week is sufficient. That's probably, combined with a long run, that's probably enough stress for a new runner that they're going to improve fairly rapidly on a schedule like that. So you have most of your runs at an easy effort. You have your workout during the week. You also should kind of have some variation between what I call easy. So 80 to 90% of your mileage is easy, but maybe once or twice per week, you're running at a recovery effort. And recovery pace is basically a very, very easy pace. So your long run might be an easy pace, but the day before your long run, maybe you did a workout, faster session the day before, maybe that day is a recovery effort. Because it's the day after your workout, it's the day before your long run. So you really want to make sure that you're properly recovered from that workout and you're ready for the long run. So that run is going to be probably slower than the long run. And so this is another thing that kind of trips up a lot of runners is that they run their long run at the slowest pace that they run all week. And the long run is not a recovery run. No matter how slow you do it, just by its very nature, it is a long run. You can't turn a 30-kilometer run into a recovery run just by running it really slow.
Yeah.
You're still going to be on your feet for a very long time, and you're surely not going to feel very recovered afterward. So besides the workout, besides some variation with your easy pace, I really think the other way of adding a lot of pace variety into your training is by doing either hill sprints or strides. You can do that 2 or 3 days per week. And these are, strides are accelerations. So they're about 100 meters. You get up to about 95, 98% of your maximum speed. You only hold that for about 2 seconds, and then you coast to a stop. These are a staple in high school and university track and cross-country programs. If you ever go to a professional track meet, you'll probably see every runner doing strides before their race.
Okay.
If you can catch a glimpse of their warm-up.
Right.
And that's because they're really great at helping you warm up for a hard effort. They're really great at, improving turnover and foot speed and improving your mechanics and your running economy. And they're better thought of as a drill than really a type of workout or anything like that. So you would do these after an easy run. Maybe after that, recovery run where you're getting ready for the long run the next day, you might do 4 strides. And yes, they are fast, but as soon as they start to feel fast, you're slowing down, you're coasting to a stop. So they really shouldn't be thought of as difficult or thought of as a workout. And so that is, I think, the biggest ways in which a runner can get more pace variety into their training. Let's have an easy long run. Let's have some recovery runs. Let's have a faster workout where maybe we're running a variety of paces there, maybe 5K pace, 10K pace, your threshold pace, things like that. And then we can run strides during the week. I think those are some of the most impactful ways to ensure that the structure of your training is including pace variety to help you stay healthy and also to help you improve too.
I guess for a new runner who hasn't had the experience of tracking a lot of runs and knowing their 5K, 10K pace and things like this, how would one actually figure out what is my easy pace and then what should I be running my, say, tempo runs pace at? Like, how would they figure those kind of things out?
Yeah, great question. Let's start with the easiest one, which is your easy pace. Now, easy pace might be a little bit difficult to determine if you started running yesterday, because most of your runs are probably not going to feel easy no matter how slow you go. So generally speaking, an easy run isn't done by a particular pace. It's really done by effort. So it's supposed to be easy, whatever that is for you, whatever pace that might be for you individually. That's your easy effort pace. And so I like to tell runners, let's make sure your easy pace is comfortable. So you should just feel comfortable. You're not pushing. You're not like in a workout situation where you're worried about hitting certain splits or anything like that. You just feel comfortable out there. You should also feel controlled. So sometimes in a race, sometimes in a workout, you might feel out of control. Like, let me just get one more lap, and you're just flailing to get to the finish. None of that during easy pace. You just want to feel totally in control the entire time. And lastly, let's make the run conversational. So if we're running together, you should be able to talk to your friend, tell them a funny story, be able to have a conversation and say mostly full sentences. If you can abide by those 3 C's of easy running, comfortable, controlled, and conversational, then you're probably running an easy pace. And the more experience you have as a runner, the easier it's going to be to dial in that easy effort. Now, the other paces, actually, some of them are pretty easy to determine too. Your 5K pace is your 5K race pace. If you've never raced a 5K, I think you should go race a 5K and actually get your 5K pace that way. The 5K is a pretty approachable distance. It's fairly accessible. Hopefully, there's lots of races in New Zealand right now because you guys are kicking COVID's butt compared to the US. And you guys don't have to cancel all your races like we do, but just go enter a 5K race, see how you're doing. And, whatever time that you get, that's your 5K pace. And the same thing for 10K pace, half marathon pace, but you might want to wait for those paces because those are more demanding races. Now, tempo or threshold or lactate threshold, that's a little bit more of a difficult pace to determine for new runners because it's best determined for runners who have some training underneath them. So a lot of coaches will describe tempo pace as, your 1 hour race pace. Well, if you're a new runner, running for an hour might be impossible yet. Never mind racing for a full hour. So that's very different and it's very difficult to determine. Now, if you do have a couple race performances, you could use that to determine your tempo pace. And you might want to talk to either a coach or a more experienced runner to help you do that. They'll probably want to look at some pacing tables and just kind of see where it should be. But, if you're a runner who races a 10K in about an hour, then your tempo pace is about your 10K race pace. It's about the same. A lot of coaches will describe it as comfortably hard, or if you're into heart rate, it's about 85 to 90% of your maximum heart rate. Now, for that to actually mean anything, number one, you need to be somewhat highly trained because your heart rate's going to be all over the place if you're a new runner. And the other thing too is you actually have to know what your maximum heart rate is. You can't use the old 220 minus your age. That formula is just not very accurate at all. There's too much individual variability. And a lot of runners will just find that it's completely out of touch with the reality of their heart rate ranges.
Right.
So the best way to get your maximum heart rate is to wear a heart rate monitor during a grueling workout or in a race where you are running as hard as you can. And in those situations where you're pushing yourself to the max, your maximum heart rate reading is likely going to be your max heart rate. So that's a better method of getting your max heart rate if you're going to use that approach.
Right.
And so those are some good ways of determining your pacing. It's admittedly a little bit tough for new runners, but it gets easier and easier as they develop experience, as they race more, and as they just start to understand themselves better as runners.
Yeah, and I agree. I think especially for the guys that I'm working with at the moment, for sort of, us beginners working towards this event, I keep mentioning, hey, look, don't allow those runs to get too quick. I think it's very common for a lot of us who have only ever experienced running in the case of doing it in a circuit or doing it in a CrossFit session or just doing it for recreational activity, and you just go out the gate and try to hit it really fast. But I'm trying to reiterate, hey, look, we want this to be a conversational pace. Like, can we have a conversation while we're running? And I think that's a really good metric to use for knowing if it's easy or not, is can I actually talk to somebody? And now, Jason, before we kind of move on and just have a quick chat about actual race day strategies, I did want to ask your viewpoint on actual race cadence as well, or I should say, I guess, step cadence, and how fast somebody's legs should actually be moving when they are running. Because I think that one is quite commonly talked about in running circles. Should it be a certain beat or steps per minute sort of cadence, depending on what kind of run it is? And how can we look at actually measuring that as well while we're running to get us in the best place for being the most efficient runner?
Yeah, another good question. Let me first let you in on a secret.
Hit me.
Very few pro or university level runners worry about their cadence. So I would encourage runners not to go down the rabbit hole of freaking out about their cadence. Now, your cadence is your step rate, or the number of steps that you take in a minute. And I think a lot of runners have been focusing on this metric, and I do think it's a very good metric for understanding how you run. And so forgive me, I'm going to have to use some imperial system numbers
go for it.
instead of your metric numbers. But, if you're a runner who's running under 10 minutes per mile, then I think your cadence should be over 170 steps per minute. Now, that's for your easy effort. But if you're a runner who's running slower than 10 minutes a mile for your easy paced running, then let's instead be over 160 steps per minute. So it's sort of this range between 160 and up that is partly dependent upon your speed. So the faster you run, the faster your cadence is going to be. So if you measure your cadence during an easy run, which is really the only place we should be measuring our cadence, I would love to see your cadence in those ranges. Somewhere between 170 and 180 if you're running faster than 10 minutes per mile, and at least over 160 if you're running slower than 10 minutes per mile. But if you were to measure your cadence when you're running 5K pace, it's probably going to be over 200 steps a minute. If you run a stride and you're running close to your maximum speed, your cadence might be 220, 230 steps per minute. And so, runners, it's very difficult for runners to then go change their cadence. So if they find out, okay, my cadence is 158 steps a minute, and I usually run at 930 mile pace, Coach Jason said I should probably be at around 170. How do I do that? Well, the number one way to improve your cadence is not to actually try to run with a quicker cadence, because what inevitably happens is that you end up running faster. So you still want to run in your easy effort, but with a quicker cadence. The best way to do that is, again, we're coming back to the training, right? For injury prevention, training is the number one thing.
Right.
The best way to improve your cadence is through training. It's through faster workouts. It's through strides. It's through heavy weightlifting. It's through form drills. It's through plyometrics. It's through trail running. It's through all those different things that we can do as runners that make us stronger, that make us more athletic, more coordinated, that improve our mobility. All of those elements of fitness are going to get our cadence to where it should be. Because if you find a runner who's doing all those things, who's training well, who's being intentional about their workouts, about their strength training, they're doing strides, they're running races and they're running really fast, they're trying to kick in and run strong at the end of a race. I would bet you it's almost impossible to find a runner whose cadence is way too slow. So it's typically a problem among new runners who just don't have the experience, and runners who aren't training properly because, after all, they're not training properly. So they're seeing negative outcomes with their running. So, on the one hand, it's not something that most runners should really be too worried about. But on the other hand, it is an important metric for your injury risk. So if your cadence is very, very low, you're just taking these slow bounding strides that are less efficient and that are going to increase your injury risk. So it could be something that's worth looking into. So next time you're out there for an easy run, just count how many times your feet hit the ground within a minute. That's your cadence. And you maybe can play with it a little bit. And I think the best way to do that is to get on a treadmill. So you can set the treadmill to be at a constant pace. And then from there, you can play with your cadence a little bit, speed it up, slow it down, kind of get a good feel for it so that if you do want to increase it by a couple steps per minute, then you have an environment in which to do it where you're not going to run too fast. You're actually going to keep the pace constant. So it's a fun metric. I think it's a valuable metric, but I also don't think it's something that runners, should be laboring over too much on a weekly basis.
No, that's cool. That's great. Something that just popped up for me, Jason, is the question of I guess for a new runner who is following a program, the difference between, I guess, them knowing if they're doing too much or whether they're actually just feeling the effects of a rigorous training program working towards a marathon. How would a runner kind of assess their own recovery to know, hey, look, maybe I should actually be skipping this interval session today and I'll just do my long run this week? How would they know if the fatigue they are feeling is just as a result of the program, or they're actually at a point where they need to pull back and this is actually too much for them in their current fitness state?
Oh, this is the $1 million question. This is the question that everyone wants to be able to answer. So with the caveat that I don't actually know, this is the question that, every coach, every runner is going to struggle with. I think number one, it really helps to have more running experience because this is a trial and error kind of a situation. I think one of the reasons why the injury rate among runners is so high is because we don't listen to our bodies. We keep pushing when we shouldn't. We think we can run more and run faster than we really can. And so in a way, runners are just wonderful at deluding themselves. We always think we can do better, we can do more, we can go faster.
Right.
And that's one reason why we love pushing ourselves. We love exploring the frontiers of what we are capable of. And that is by its nature a little bit risky, isn't it? Just by trying to see how hard you can go, how fast you can be, occasionally you're going to run into that brick wall and hurt yourself. And like my kind of, my big IT band injury after my first marathon, that was a big learning experience for me. And that really helped me kind of revamp my training. And so I think injuries can do that for other runners. But ultimately, it's a learning process. And as runners are going through their training, I think it can be helpful just to look for a few warning signs. So, if you wake up in the morning and your legs are so tight and sore that you're worried you're not going to be able to go running, that's a big warning sign in my mind. You shouldn't feel fresh as a daisy every day that you get up out of bed if you're hard training and you're really trying to push the envelope with your running. But at the same time, you should be able to warm up and kind of ease into a run and complete the run without this fear that your body is going to break or you're not going to be able to finish the run. The other thing that you can look at is, number one, is my training structured well? Am I doing strength training? Because you can afford to push the envelope a little bit more and, maybe go a little bit faster or do that workout even when you are a little bit sore or tired. If you're training well, if the structure is good, if you're doing all that strength training. So again, it all comes down to get your training squared away
Yeah.
first, because that solves a lot of problems
Yeah.
for runners. And, the other thing too, I think it's helpful to know what you can run through and what you can't run through. So a lot of runners, will ask me, can I run through this soreness? I have this weird pain. Can I still do my run today? So if you are experiencing something, then it can be helpful to have kind of this 3-part framework that I have. So if you go for a run and you're feeling some discomfort, maybe it's pain, maybe it's, just a soreness or a niggle. If it gets worse as you run, that's a red flag. That means your running is causing whatever's bothering you to get worse. So that's a red flag. We should never run through anything that that gets worse as we run. The other thing to remember is we should never run through anything that makes us alter our form. So if you're out there running and something's bothering you, but you find out that, if I just run on the outside of my foot a little bit
Yeah.
more, or, if I turn my knee in a little bit, then, it doesn't hurt anymore. Well, what you're doing is effectively giving yourself a limp to compensate for the pain that you're experiencing. So it might feel good for that run, but now you're opening yourself up to a whole new collection of injuries that could happen because you're not running the way that your body is really designed to run. So don't try to compensate for any discomfort by changing your form. And the other thing is just the severity of the pain. So if it's sharp, if it's stabbing, if it's really an intense type of pain, then that's another red flag. Let's not run through anything like that. Now, of course, the opposite of all that is true. If whatever you're experiencing goes away as you run or gets less severe as you run, well, that's an encouraging sign to me. If you don't have to change your form, and if the pain is more like a dull ache or kind of just like a low-grade soreness, all those things are okay to run through generally. Maybe we dial back the intensity of a workout, maybe we cut the volume of that workout, or maybe we just don't run as much for a longer run. Those are some fair compromises that we might have to make with our training, but I think something is better than nothing. So if you can go running, let's do an easy run in place of the workout, maybe just a short run in place of the long run. But if you don't have any of those red flags, I think we can still get out there for some easy running.
Those are some fantastic tips there, Jason. And I think we've covered a lot of great stuff in this episode. I'm really grateful of that. I guess to finish this thing up, I'd love to ask what kind of race day tips you have for our listeners as they work towards that big meet day that they have, the half marathon, the marathon, whatever it may be. Is there specific strategies you use to, I guess, allow people to get across that line a little bit easier, whether it's just a mental strategy or there's some kind of little nutritional tip that you could give people, or is it a breathing strategy that they could use during their race? What are some race day tips and tricks you can give to our listeners from someone who's obviously been through it many times themselves?
Yeah, I think race day preparation and just being able to execute on race day is something that you learn over time. And I do think that racing is a skill. It is very hard to go race 5,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 42.2 kilometers as hard as you can and do that in a very productive, efficient way. That takes skill and that takes time to learn that skill. So I think one of the things that we can do to get good at racing, to have more confidence on race day, is to run more races, even if they are low pressure, short races like the 5K or 8K or 10K. I honestly don't care what the distance is. The shorter the race, the more frequently you can run that type of race, the faster you recover from it, and the more you're going to learn about yourself because you're doing them more frequently. So, kind of stepping back, one of the ways that someone has a better race day experience is if they've had more race day experiences. So for the beginner runners, don't be afraid of racing. Go enter all those 5Ks. You can run one every other week for a little while.
Yeah.
And just see how your body responds to maximal effort running. That's going to make you into a better racer. The other thing too is I love getting runners to a point where they get to the starting line and they know there aren't going to be any surprises. They have practiced their fueling approach in training. They have done workouts that have specifically prepared them for the race. they have done the mileage and the long run that they know is going to give them the stamina endurance to finish the race. And so, in a way, racing is simply a logical extension of training. And so, if you've done the right training, again, we're always coming back to training, aren't we, Jackson?
That's right.
If we do the right training, then we are just going to be that much better on race day.
Right.
And so, I always tell my runners, look, trust the training that you've done. Look back on that workout that you did 4 weeks ago. You just did 6 weeks of high mileage running that you've never done before. And so I like to be a little bit of, this master persuasive artist with my runners and really try to convince them that they are ready, that they are capable, because not just because I'm a cheerleader who doesn't know any better, they've done the work.
Yeah.
And so I'll always encourage runners to do the work, get a lot of experience. You're just going to get better and better at it because look, racing is stressful, and there's no breathing tip or some sort of mindset hack that's going to make racing easy. It's difficult for everyone, even the fastest runners in the world. The only way that they cope with that is by regularly exposing themselves to similar types of stress through hard workouts, through regular training, and through regular racing too. So make it a habit, race consistently, do the training that's going to get you prepared for whatever race you're training for. And you're just going to have a great time on race day.
Yeah. It all comes back to, having an appropriate time scale before, signing up to this event, appropriate time, enough time to train, and of course, the most appropriate training program for you, for that individual, and ensuring that you adhere to that long term, and that's going to make that race day that much more enjoyable for you. I have to ask though, Jason, what is the idea of hitting the wall? Is that a bit of a running myth, or is that something that is a reality? And what do you think that comes down to? Is it just lack of glycogen, or is it us just hitting the wall in terms of running low on glucose in the blood, or is there something else that's going on there?
Yeah, hitting the wall or bonking is very much a real thing, and it's typically what's going to happen in the marathon, because the marathon is a race where, like I said earlier, it's short enough to be a fast event, but it's long enough that your body can't store enough fuel for all that running. So your body can store enough fuel for, maybe about 2 hours or 20 miles worth of running. And if you are running, let's just use myself for an example. So I pretty much hit the wall at mile 20 at that New York City marathon, my first marathon. And that's because I didn't fuel well. I didn't carb load beforehand. I didn't have enough gels during the race. And I had this very classic cliche hit the wall experience where your body runs out of glycogen. And if you don't have the fuel to run fast, well, what happens? You just gradually start slowing down. And it's this very unsettling experience where you simply can't run faster. Even if I had stopped, taken a breather and then tried to run 400 meters as hard as I could, it would have been really, really hard to do anything much faster. And I just didn't have the fuel in my body to power that running. And so that's what hitting the wall is. It's not having enough fuel. And so I would encourage anyone who's doing a marathon to, top up their carb stores in the days leading up to the race, maybe in the 1 to 2 days leading up to the marathon, and then have a big carby breakfast before the race, and then fuel intelligently during the race. And that's so that, you're giving yourself more carbohydrate beforehand, really stocking up your blood, your muscles, so that, hopefully you can get a little bit further into the race before you start running out of fuel. And then the gels or whatever fuel you choose during the race can make up the difference and help you get to the finish line. And then from there, you can go have your double cheeseburger and fries and a beer and and celebrate.
I love it, man. There's some great strategies. I'm definitely hanging out for that post-marathon meal. It's going to be a really good time. To finish up here, Jason, I'd love to ask what your current training looks like and what you're sort of getting into these days. Obviously, COVID's a bit of a restriction if you were going to plan on doing any events coming up, but what does your current training look like?
Yeah, so I am training about 5 days of running, 1 day of cycling per week. I'm not training at the level that I once was. I used to be, running 85, 90 miles a week and,
Wow.
that's when I was running my 2:39 marathon,
Wow.
and was a somewhat competitive runner at that time.
Right.
But, I have 3 children right now. And so I don't really have the time to put in those mega hours of training, but I'm still training pretty well. I'm running 5 days a week. I'm doing a good bike ride once a week. I have a road bike and I absolutely love it. I think just because I get to go fast.
Yeah.
What can I say? I love
That's
speed.
awesome.
And, I'm still doing a lot of the other things around the training that runners should do, like strides, like strength training, a weekly workout and long run. It's just dialed a little bit back for me. But I think I'm going to try to do a trail half marathon this
Cool.
fall here in Colorado, which I'm very excited about. And if that happens, I'm going to be signing up for some tune-up races beforehand because racing is a skill, like I've said, and I need to practice that skill myself because it's been a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And so I want to get to the starting line of the half, feeling a little bit more confident in myself and what I can do. And, just not having that goal race be the first real race that I've run in more than a year.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. So that's what I'm doing now.
Cool.
But, honestly, I get more excited about my athletes running well and getting PRs than I do about my own running right now. So I just sort of pour everything into my athletes at this stage.
I love that, man. And just to finish up here, I'd love to give you the floor to plug strength running or plug your coaching and your blog and things like that, and let us know what you're up to for the rest of 2021 with the business side of things.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, we're always kind of planning new things and coming up with sort of innovative new ways of teaching runners better ways to think about their training. So yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to check out the Strength Running Podcast. We're close to 210 episodes now.
Wow.
So lots of different material from, world-class physical therapists, sports psychologists, strength coaches, elite athletes, just have had such a wide variety of people on the show. And my goal really is to give runners the support team that an elite runner might have. So they have the sports psychologist and their trainer and their coach, and then they go in the weight room and they talk to their strength coach, and they have their team of other pro runners that they can, hang out with for support. And so I try to create that on the podcast. And so even if you don't have a coach, even if you don't have a training group that you get to run with, at least you can still be learning from some of the best coaches and physiotherapists and other experts in the world on how to improve your running. So yeah, I would love for people to check out the podcast. We have a growing channel on YouTube, the Strength Running YouTube channel. You just go search, I think it's like youtube.com/strengthrunning, something like that. And we publish a new video every week on a whole host of different training topics, different exercise demonstrations, all kinds of fun stuff. And of course, our home base is strengthrunning.com. You can check out all of our free email courses, all of our different training programs that, sort of take a lot of these concepts that we've been talking about and formalize it into a program. So, if all of this sounded great, but you're not really sure what to do with this information, we've sort of executed it for you in a training plan and through that content. So I'd love to talk with any of your listeners. So you can message me on any of those platforms and I'd be happy to help you with your running.
Brilliant, man. And I'll link all that stuff in the show notes for the listeners so they can get in contact with you and check out your content as well. But hey, man, thanks so much for coming on. I know the listeners absolutely love this one and use this stuff. If they're into their running, they'll use all of this information to not only, make their training that much more enjoyable and more of a successful program, but also ensure that their race day is the everything they wanted it to be in the first place when they signed up for it. So I know that these tips are going to be super helpful for them, man. So I appreciate you coming on and giving your time and giving your knowledge, man. It's been super fun. Hey, man, I wish you all the best with the trail half marathon coming up. I'm sure that's going to be a great time.
Thanks, Jackson. This was a great conversation. Thank you very much.
There you have it, Jason Fitzgerald. I'm definitely going to be utilizing a lot of those tips and tricks as I continue preparing for this marathon. We're about 12 weeks out now, so It's going to start getting a little bit tough as these long runs start to increase their distance. So absolutely paramount to implement the recovery strategies, the strength training, and of course ensuring that I fuel my body with what it needs for these longer distances. If you're into your running, hopefully that was beneficial for you. Hit me up or hit Jason up if you've still got questions about different things. Love to help out in any way we can. And of course, go check out Jason's podcast, the blog, the YouTube channel, all that good stuff. Lastly, all I'll say is if you do want to get in touch with me regarding coaching, whether it is running specific coaching, definitely not my speciality, but I've been programming for a few guys recently and it's been quite enjoyable. Hypertrophy-based training, strength-based training, fat loss, that's what I'm all about. Jump on the Vegan Body Coach website. It's just been updated. It'll outline everything you need to know about what I do and what I don't do so that you can make a better decision whether I am the right person to work with you. I've got a couple of spots, only a couple because I don't want to take on too many for the nutrition and training component, and then a bunch more options available if you just want the training component done for you. That's all from me. Feel free to give us a review. It always helps. Share this with a friend, maybe put it on your Instagram story, and we'll see you in the next one.